Let's start. It's Kafbet Sivan Tafshinayin Tes, and we're learning Shmuel I, chapter 8, verse 16. So we're in the midst of a discussion about the Constitution. The Jews requested a king, and we'll talk a little more. We spoke at length last time what was wrong with it, but we'll just summarize it. There is one point that I think I didn't make last time, which is important to make. So they asked for a king, and on the way they sort of insulted Shmuel, and Shmuel, but being a true messenger between us and God, he went and asked God what to do, and God told him, just give him the king, but just tell them what is the what will be the constitution once the king is in play. You know, what can he do? What are his rights? And it's not pretty, you know, compared to what they had until now. The judges, which were basically almost free, you know, they needed some minimal based in expenses, you know, Supreme Court expenses, basically, or court expenses, but not beyond that. They were not. They didn't need palaces and all kinds of vehicles and animals and land. All of that judges didn't need, and he would come with the king. So he sort of. So we were in the middle of describing exactly how terrible, so to speak, the king rights are towards the people. That he will empty out he will create a whole governmental class of people. He will take them from wherever they are, uproot them, and will make them work. You know, will make them work for him, and he's not necessarily going to fit the profession to the person. So he needs 100 people. He said, okay, you're going to be in charge of A, you're going to be in charge of B, you're going to be in charge of C, and it's not necessarily going to be their skills. You know, they didn't have Senate approval, confirmation hearings. You know, it's you come, you work, or you're short by a head. You know, so it sounds very much monarchy. Yeah? It's communism is the monarchs of the people, right? So there was one very interesting question that I heard someone explaining within the Malbim today, and that is, if it was so terrible because it was before the time we said that the Jews asked for it too early, that we were supposed to wait till God initiates the request or initiates the idea rather than come and demand it. And indeed, in 3 years, when David is ripe to be a king, that would have happened anyway. And now that the Jews asked for it earlier, God yielded and said, okay, let's give him a king, but it will be like a placeholder of Shaul for 3 years. And after that, what happened is that Shaul lost it, basically, and yielded to David. But the way they asked was very interesting. What they asked is, we want to be like all the other people. What does that mean? Some of the midrashim and Chazal are teaching us that they wanted a king in order to worship idols, which sounded very strange, because if that's what they wanted to do, why did God say, okay, give it to them? You know, God is not participating in that kind of act, obviously, against him. And why God says, well, it's not that they dissing you, that they don't like you, Shmuel, it's they don't like me. So why did God agree? Just give it to them. So one of the ideas is as follows: that the Jews, until that moment, ran on a miracle. We were running in the very clear, miraculous, a-natural way of living. I would say, nowadays we also see some of that when you have 600 rockets coming in 24 hours, and last time people were killed, but in the past many years, many times it came and nothing happened, which is it's not understandable. But the idea always was that beyond the miracles, we're supposed to start working within nature. That the Jewish people supposed to settle down in the land of Israel and work within nature. Not what happened, for example, with Shmuel. Shmuel, just a couple of half a chapter ago, there was a war with the Philistines, and God made a big sound, and the Philistines were afraid, and they lost the war. That's not a normal way of running a war, It's people die from both sides, and it's war trenches in those days. You had swords. It's near impossible to run a war without having any casualties. And that was a thing of was a regular occurrence for hundreds of years. So, but the point was that eventually, as Jews settled down and conquered the land, we will move into regular order, which is within nature. But the Jews were asking, we want to go that route now. Because what they felt is there are two types of kings. There are kings that are under the religion, like Ferdinand and Isabella were used to be, and there are kings that are above the religion. They dictate what the religion will do, which is most of the kings most of the time. In America, we have a new invention where religion and king and then the government are separate. But this is really very, very new idea. It used to be either the kings are above or the religion is above. So initially the Jews said, well, we want the kings to be above the religion. We want the kings to be our judges. We want like everybody else. And we want it to be within nature. And that's the natural way of being. In those days, that was the natural way of being. Now, because eventually the idea is that we will live within nature, God said, okay, except that you need to know what you're buying into. What does it mean within nature? So within nature doesn't mean just, to find a crown and take a judge and put a crown on their head. It means a lot of other expenses and a lot of hardship, because when you put someone in a total authority that way, they can do a lot more harm than good. So you need to be aware of it. Now, so this is where we are right now, and we will see that after Shmuel finishes to describe what the constitution will look like with a king, the Jews will retreat a little bit. And they will change their tune a little bit, but at that point it's going to be a little too late already. So let's just yeah.
You seem to indicate that everybody wanted to go in this direction.
Yes.
Shmuel stood alone. I mean, we know, like, throughout the Talmud, there's always a debate. There's always a minority position. Wasn't there any group of people?
There was. It wasn't. It says clearly that the elders wanted the old way more, with the king, but the old way, and the youngsters were pushing more towards this modern day. So they had in those days maybe also some Antifa guys, who were rioting the streets.
Radicals.
Yeah, a little bit of. So the young ones wanted that. And their voice was louder, and that's what was sounding. But even the older ones who sort of agreed and went along with the king weren't able to change the message that much. But it was not. But it was clearly a very strong movement within the entire nation. It wasn't just one group, but obviously it's not. We were different people. The 3 million people at the time, so we had some differences, slight ones. Okay, so chapter 8. Verse 16. ואת עבדיכם ואת שפחותיכם ואת בחוריכם הטובים ואת חמוריכם ייקח ועשה למלאכתו. So besides all of the other taxes and eminent domain that he will take some land and he will take a whole bunch of people to work for him. After all of that, he will still take more people in order to do the real job. Because, as we know, government workers are not exactly the most productive people, and it was by design. It was by design. He will take people, he will make them his slaves, he will make them his workers, but they're not going to work all that much, and in order to do the real work, you will need a whole bunch of other people who are not government workers to do the work. So that's what this pasuk is indicating. You know, it will be taxes upon taxes, double, triple, quadruple taxes. So, which is how kings always worked. You know, they wake up in the morning, they have an expense. Okay, new tax. So your besides of the fact that he will recruit people to be his slaves, he will take your slaves too, your slaves and your maids and your good boys and your donkeys. He is going to take and he's going to use them to do his job, his work. And Sonchem Yasor, and he's going to take a tithe from the cattle. V'atem tiyu lo la'avadim, and even you. Not only that he's going to take your sons and he's going to take your slaves, he's going to take you. Even the household, the head of the households, the people who were not supposed to be under. Not supposed to go work for a king for a living. They were independent people. Even the most independent people will be suffering. And at that point, it will be too late. You will be crying to God. You'll cry to God. Because of your king, you're going to be crying to God, Asher Bachartem, the king that you chose. And God is not going to answer you on that day. It's a promise that once you go and you move your entire operation to be working under natural ways, there is no way back. You cannot just snap a finger, okay, now I want a miracle. We want to go back to our good old days when manna came from heaven and and we won the wars just by God's will. It doesn't work anymore. And nonetheless, the people were very adamant about moving in that direction, even though they were advised not to. So the people refused. Vayimanu is a very strong word of refusing. They refused to listen to B'kol Shmuel. Why did they refuse to listen to B'kol Shmuel? Because Shmuel told them that God said, okay, give them a king, just tell them what the constitution is going to look like. So they said, so why should we listen to you? God agrees with us. God told you that it's okay. So we want it. Yes, you're a smart man and all, but you're a little too old for our taste right now, and we're not going to listen to you. No, we don't want to listen to you to your advice. We want a king that will be on top of us. And now we have a very interesting sort of retreat and modification and amendment of their request, which we didn't find before. And we will be like all of the other nations. And our king is going to judge us. Will go in front of us. It will fight our wars. Now, if you look before in in verse 6, verse 5. It says, verse 5, it says, Sima lanu melech, put a king on top of us, leshaftenu, to judge us, kechol hagoyim. How is the judgment is going to be? The judgment is going to be like all the other nations. So they clearly wanted a situation like they saw on TV, like everybody else. Now they modified it. They don't want that the judgment is going to be like all the other nations. They want a king like all the other nations, but the judgment is going to be by the king according to God. Kechol hagoyim. And if you see the ta'amim, the notes, it's a stop. It's a hard stop. We want to be like all of the goyim. Stop, comma, or even a period. And the king is going to be judging us. So according to what the judgment, according to which law the king is going to employ? The law of God, not the law of himself. He's not going. That's what they're asking now. Before they ask, we want a king to create a body of law for us and judge us, and we don't want to hear from Shmuel anymore. So it's not that they were dissing Shmuel, they were dissing the law of God. And now they're retreating and they're changing and they say, you know what? We want the mechanism, but we want the king, to be implementing God's law. V'yatza lefaneinu, and he's going to go in front of us, and he's going to fight our wars. Typically, when you have a king, the king will call all of the wars after himself. It's my war. I won the war. It's the war from... And this is how the Rambam is explaining the halachot of kings, that the king is allowed, besides a war that he is instructed to fight, if God tells him to fight, that's through a prophet, he can fight whatever war he wants to fight. He decides that he wants that plot of land. Okay, so he starts a war. So it's the war of King X the third. Okay? But the Jews here, the nation, were telling the king, we're telling Shmuel, we don't want that kind of a king, which we realize is not to our advantage. It's not really what we wanted. We want the king to fight our wars. Because what they felt is that throughout the past 400 years, all of the wars were not preemptive wars. All of the wars came after several years of being enslaved or harassed by the perpetrator, the enemy, the jour. Okay? And instead of, and what they felt is needed is a king that will preempt all of that. A king is not going to let some Ammonites or Midianites or Moabites or whoever it is that is coming to harass us. They're not going to let, after day one, day two, just take a drone down and we'll just destroy you right away. That's what they were looking for. They felt that there was no, because when you live in a miraculous way, it all depends on how religious you are. So if you put on tefillin, you're okay. If you don't put on tefillin, God is sending some neighbor to give you a bang on the head. So the whole thing is supernatural. Is not really within. It's of nothing to do with that person needing that land. It has to do with you not putting on tefillin or not doing a certain mitzvah, right? But they want to get out of that. So when you get out of that, it's all in a natural way. In a natural way, that's how that's the nature of man. Everybody is looking for power. Everyone is looking for land, for resources, for whatever that is, and that's how wars are being conducted. So. So they were looking for someone to sort of change the paradigm of war and fight our wars.
So it says here, English translation, once you pick the king, Hashem, and you pray, Hashem will not answer you on that day. So does that mean now, because the king was chosen, our prayers will not be answered in certain regards?
So this is exactly the point that we were making. When you live a miraculous life it's almost like pressing a button. You do A, you get B. God wants something to happen, it happens right away. When we live in a natural way, in a natural world, you can't really see when things happen. It's the hand of God is hidden, like in the story of Purim, like in our story today. You don't see God in the street, but God is watching us and God is helping us. But it's not one-to-one. It's not. You can't say, well, I wake up in the morning, I'll do ABC, so in the afternoon it's going, X, Y, Z will happen to me. That's not how it works, because that's not how nature works. It has to work within nature. So God is not going to answer us on the spot. It used to be when we were doing the right thing, we would go to the judge. The judge is going to pray to God. God is going to give, the breastplate. He's going to give an answer. Bada bing, bada boom, it's going to happen within 24, 48 hours after the whole story is done. That's what happened before. But now it's, it can take a generation. It can take whatever. It's not hocus pocus anymore. It's precisely the line that they were hanging this whole theory on. וישמע שמואל את כל דברי העם וידברם במודיעין השם. So now that Shmuel heard that they rejected him resoundly, soundly, they don't want his advice, so he is going back to being a true messenger between us and God. He's not going to give them any more advice. He just listens and he doesn't interfere. He's a very humble man, and he understands that this is something bigger than it's movements in the world that are bigger than what he can influence. So he just tells God exactly what they said. Vayomer Hashem el Shmuel. So God told him, no problem. Listen, Shema b'kulam. Listen to their request, because there is a provision to have a king. I thought that the king is going to come in 3 years under certain circumstances. They wanted early, no problem. It's possible, it's allowed. It's just going to change the whole thing, but no problem, give it to them. And you shall anoint a king to them. ויאמר שמואל אל אנשי ישראל, לכו איש לעירו. You should go each one to your city. Now, one interesting comment. In the past 400 years, we saw several times that the terrorism and the wars were very localized. They either in the north or in the south, and whoever was close by, the tribes that were close by, were the ones to step up and protect and fight. And the rest of them, it wasn't common for them to come help. Occasionally they did, and even when you had a judge, like a strong judge like Dvorah, that was leading calling them to come, 4, 5, or 6 of the tribes didn't show up, and she was very upset, and she sang a song against them, and telling them, rebuking them, how dare you didn't come to help. So we were a bunch of tribes, and what the Jews felt is, we want to be a nation. We want one king. But instead of under God, it's going to be under the king. They wanted one king to unite us. So what Shmuel is telling them, no more go each one to your tribe, but go to your city. Now it's going to be like a normal place. We're all living in different cities, but you belong to one nation. And this is... this brings us to the next chapter 9, which is the introduction to Shaul. So, who was Shaul? And so Shaul was an unknown quantity. Was never mentioned. He was. We find Shaul now at the age of 50-ish. Doesn't say it clearly, but what it does say that his son, who took Ishbosheth, who took the stage, who took the reign after he died, was 40 when he became a king. Now Shaul was 2.5 years a king, so let's say round up 3 years. So now his son is 37. If his son is now 37, Shaul has to be at least 50, right? I mean, even if you marry young. So he was in his 50s, early 50s, mid 50s. And he was unknown, but, and we will see in the second verse here, and this is again something that's many times overlooked, he was the most qualified person in the entire nation to take this position. Even David, who lived at that time already, was functioning, was not as good as he is at that moment, which is very, very strong. I mean, it's a common, it's a sport amongst the modern commentaries to put down Saul. You know, he was this and he was that. It was very easy to read certain verses, and he ran after David. It's not that simple. He was the most qualified. The Navi, the prophet, is telling us he was the most qualified person. So we better believe that first, and then we'll see what happened. So maybe what happened was not, on the surface so simple, because he cannot become such a hoodlum after he is the most qualified person, right?
It is a common Jewish name. I mean, a lot of people name their children Shaul.
Of course,
so
of course.
It can't have been
so
terrible.
Right. Now, he was from the tribe of Binyamin. And we will see, that's very strange. So, let's just read the first sentence. Vayhi ish mi Binyamin. Now, how is it written? It's written two words. Benyamin, right? Mm-hmm. But we're reading it Binyamin. We will see soon why. So that man, his name was Kish, and his father Ben Aviel, Ben Tzror, Ben Bechorat, Ben Afiach, Ben Ish Yemini, Gibor Chai. He was from the tribe of Binyamin, and he was also a very strong man, a very accomplished individual, Kish. That's the father of Shaul. So why is he saying here Binyamin? So if you recall, we said that Shaul was a placeholder for the real king, for the everlasting king, for the eternal king that we have, which is King David. And he was from the tribe of Binyamin. Now, and he was 3 years as a king, and then he was taken away from him. It's very, imagine the kings in England, somebody after 3 years, somebody comes to the family and says, you're no longer kings. That's how all the wars started, They're not. It's not simple to take the ruling class and telling them, goodbye, give it to someone else. Nonetheless, the tribe of Binyamin was cooperating fully. They didn't fight it. They so much didn't fight it. They integrated into Judah. They integrated into the ruling party, that they were adjacent to Yehuda, right? And it's a tribe that was, a couple of 100 years ago, we had the story with Pilegesh Bagivar, right? The tribe was almost destroyed totally. Only 600 men were left. So it was the smallest of the tribes, and it was very easy for them to everybody to pick a fight with them again. But no, they remain the right hand, Benjamin, the right hand to Judah forever. And even after the 10 tribes disappeared, Benjamin stayed. Benjamin and Judah remained as the only two that really remained as a whole. So this is to sort of to give them the compliment after we gave them a little bit over the head previously at the end of the book of Shoftim with the Pilegesh Bagiva. They earned it. Now, they really straightened themselves out. Now, Aviel, the father of Kish, has another name. His name was also Ner. That's in Divrei Yamim, it's written that his name was Ner. And he is the father of Avner ben Ner. Avner ben Ner was the defense minister, or the head of the joint chiefs of Saul. He was the army, the commander of the army. So it was his uncle, Now, So Aviel, his name was Ner. Why was his name Ner? His name was Ner because he invented some good civil society order, and that is to light up small alleys, dark alleys. He invented this whole idea that you should have public lighting on the streets so people can go safely. That's why his name became Ner, and that's why his whole family became very, very important as a result. Now, we said that Binyamin was the smallest of tribes, and Kish was from the youngest of families. And we will see later Saul is saying, why are you choosing me? I'm like, from the youngest family, the youngest person, the youngest tribe, why me? Now,
Kish Binyamin, this has nothing to do with Mordechai, Ben Kishi Shemini?
It's exactly the same Kish.
It is the same.
The same Kish. That's exactly the same Kish. And in the same at the time of Mordechai, there were a few generations skipped a few generations, right? Because it was several hundred years later. But it's the same. It's the same Kish. And Shaul had created the whole story of Purim single-handedly, right? Mordechai is coming from Mordechai and Esther both coming from Kish, right? And Shaul is the one that allowed Agag, the king of Amalek, to have a relationship with that maid the night before Shaul killed him. And from that relationship, Haman came. So Shaul organized for us the whole natural order where God is not written in the Megillah. And everything is being done by nature. In nature, the king writes a letter, and the king, the minister of the king is trying to kill him. The guards are trying to kill him, and then the minister is, the whole story of the Megillah, which is all very, very easily understandable as a, big coincidence. This is all coming from here, from the demand of the Jewish people. We want a king that works on the nature. So in a few generations you will see how it really works, So now some of those people, like Avich, I think, are unknown to us, and some rabbis, some commentators believe that they were killed during the situation with the Pilegesh Bagiva. So they were just the unknown to us. Now. So this Kish gentleman had the verse 2, Velo haya ben, and he had the son, Shmo Shaul, and that name of the son is Shaul, which we know as King Shaul. Shaul also means borrowed, as we mentioned. His whole persona is like a placeholder for a king, so he's Shaul. And he is Bachur Vatov. Bachur in modern Hebrew means young, well, he's not young. Bachur also means selected, elected. Okay, so he was the chosen one. Okay, he was the chosen one, and he was good. He was totally through and through good. There was nothing bad about this man. Then ish mibnei Israel tov mimeno. There is no one else in the entire nation that's better than him. Mishichmo v'mala. He was also very tall, and from we see in American elections, most of the presidents are tall people. They're just tall people. Happens to be tall because when someone is tall, it's for how many hundreds of years we're laughing at Napoleon because he wasn't tall. In order to rule, it's better if you're tall. Yeah. And the rabbis also implemented in Sanhedrin. When you needed to select the 71 people of the Sanhedrin, the rabbis of the Sanhedrin, and you had two people that are equally qualified, but one is taller, you take the taller one, because people are.
You could look up to him.
Well, yes, to look up, and it's called Mora Malchut. It strikes fear in people when they in awe. Oh yeah,
You
exactly.
have the expression, he was head and shoulders over.
He was head and shoulder above everyone. That's where it's from. That's where it's come from. Mishichmo v'mala gavoa mikol ha'am. So he was physically tall. He was spiritually tall. He was very, very. We will see later. He was very extremely handsome. So much so that when he met a bunch of ladies on the way, they struck a long conversation with him instead of just telling him. He asked him for directions. So instead of telling them, go straight, they had a whole conversation with him because they liked him, because he was a likable person. Now, another interesting point, that he apparently wasn't really aware or wasn't really involved with Shmuel. Shmuel was the leader of the Jewish people at that time. They never met. He never saw him. He didn't even know he existed. Strange, because they live around the same area. But he was very much keeping to himself, very much secluded, learning, taking care of his own affairs. And this whole story that we will see now is going to be the exact polar opposite of what the Jews were asking for. We're asking for natural order. It's all going to look like it doesn't make sense that someone from nowhere suddenly become a king within days. He did accomplish stuff. He was the guy that on the war when we lost the ark. Right, we lost the ark, and then the Philistines took it. He was the one that rescued the actual tablets from the ark. He went and he rescued from within once they took the ark, captured the ark, he went in and rescued single-handedly. So he was very tall, very strong, and he was very accomplished. But it did not give him any notoriety. I mean, famous. He didn't become famous on account of that. And he went back to his...
Because he was humble, right?
Because he was humble, even though, because he was, and his name is not mentioned there, only in the Medrash they tell us that he is the one that did it. In the text, it doesn't mention that.
Was Shmuel looking for some kind of sign, like Eliezer was looking for?
So Shmuel knew that God is going to tell him exactly what and how, and we will see it was exact science for Shmuel. He was told exactly where to go and what to do and how to. Every single thing was directed by God, and Shmuel followed it, and he got his men, and it was.
He looked up for a sign. So Shaul's
Exactly right, but it was incredible, and it starts with a very strange story. Vatovadna atonot lekish, that the mules, like the best mules, they had some very special mules. They got
Donkeys here.
well, it's not donkeys, it's mules. Atonot in modern Hebrew is a donkey and a horse together. That's a mule, and that's aton. Chamor is a donkey. Aton is not. So anyway, he was looking for those mules. Now, everything about Shaul is the exact opposite of what a king is going to be. Because Shmuel was trying to tell him, listen, this is what the king is going to be. Let's find somebody who has the most possibility of not being that bad. Now, one of the things that we mentioned about a king, that a king likes to raise horses, likes to ride horses, likes to have the best horses. He would send people to Egypt, where is where you can get the Ferrari horses of the day and get horses there. And he was told not to, right? Here we're dealing with a guy that deals with mules. Nobody yet is sitting on a mule and feeling good about themselves, This is not the animal of choice in order to feel good. So the whole story with him, he's going to look for mules. It's so total opposite. And he was humble, and and when he was walking around, he didn't have a dime to his name. The servant that went with him, we will see, had a few dollars, You know, he didn't have a dime in his pocket when he needed to pay for something. It was lost. He didn't have. Again, looking for someone who is the polar opposite of what a king is, can be, how bad it can be. So it's not that God and Shmuel were trying to trip the Jews. The opposite. We were trying to give them the most leash. You have all the possibilities in the world to succeed. Please do the right thing. So when is Mincha? In 2 minutes?
8:15.
8:15. All right. So I guess we'll continue in the next time. Verse 3.
Thank you.
Go ahead.